Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all. It's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, A Box With No Lid. A channel that I've created to not only to bring awareness to the day-to-day realities complex trauma creates, but also really exploring and delving into ways we can heal. Now, for all you out there, I want to welcome you back to part 2 of the reoccurring predictable outcomes. And in this video, I want to start to delve into ways we can work with expanding our 5x9 box. Now, when you start to work with this stuff, you can't just walk out the door. Your nervous system will completely, metaphorically, your nervous system will not cope. It will just carry that 5x9 box with you. It's teaching your nervous system to assess safely larger and ever larger environments. You know, one of the biggest things that trauma creates is a very black and white. It either is or it isn't. It's either yes or it's no. It's either go or stay. You know, it's either good or bad. There's no gray areas because gray areas create unpredictability. Unpredictability keeps us on edge. So, with working with our nervous system, you know, instead of it being yes and no, add in one maybe. There's yes, there's no, and there's one potential maybe. And when that becomes a little more confident and comfortable, you add 2 maybes and 3 maybes and so forth and so forth. When you're looking at your engagement in the people around you, you know, instead of it's just you and this person, it's you, this person, and this person. And how you can start to teach your nervous system to work safely, to reassess a larger box in environments that are supportive, that are protective, safe, and seen. You will need to always add a level of predictability. But there are ways you can do it. You know, and even in the more extreme cases, creating a Zoom session where you have 2 people at the same time is an excellent place to start. You're in a home environment, you are in absolute control, but you're processing engagements and interactions between, you know, 2 other people. And then you can add more down the road. It's these ways of teaching your nervous system to expand the box, to allow for more inputs. And secondly, it's when we get it, you know, this is where the garden analogy, a garden ecology is perfect. Because when we start to look at what all of our decisions construct, you know, each choice we make, each decision we make is either a plant, a rock, a stick, a stake, a paving brick. You know, it's something that we're placing into our garden. And if you have a certain theme, you know, if, you know, decisions that you make constantly are about reassuring that, you know, your back's not exposed and that, you know, all these things are all around defensive structures. It's like if you keep on putting one type of plant in your garden, pretty much your garden will only be that type of plant. And this is how we can start to see what we're creating. That's why, as I said in the previous video, about the garden analogy is so perfect. Because with a pen and paper, or even on a computer, it's not that hard to really see what it is you're actually creating with your eyes right in front of you. It's not these random ideas in your head or these words on a page that someone's expecting you to read. It's not that hard to create a visual representation. So if you look at, okay, how many decisions do I make in a day that are defensive? How many decisions that I make in a day are for me to get out of something? How many decisions have I made in a day that I've made hundreds of times before? The same type of food, the same known thing. These things, even if you get little tiny, you know, colored balls from a dollar store or confetti or something like that, you can create the same color for the same type of decision. Every time you do it, you put it down on a board. Get a poster board, get some marker pens, same thing. Do a little circle for, okay, defensive decision, defensive decision, defensive decision. And you can very quickly see actually how you recreate and reinforce your 5x9 box. This post-trauma, immediately post-trauma environment and all its restrictions and limitations. And it is a really scary and confronting thing to do, but it is also very powerful. Like, I remember I've done it a couple of times in different versions for myself. And, you know, one of the exercises that was done when I was in Canada was I was sitting with an elder, and she was, you know, we were running through these defensive things that I was saying over this weekend. And we were down near a lake, and every time I made a defensive decision and remembered it, I had to take a step back. And that lake was the representative of belonging and family. And it wasn't long before I was 100 feet away from that lake, with just all I was doing when I thought I was doing the right thing, and it really brought it home. It's the same if you do it with a poster board and marker pens or confetti or however you want to do it. But do a visual representation of it. You know, talking about it is one thing, but when you actually see what you do to yourself, it is confronting, but it's also a very powerful thing to help you heal. Because it made me consciously realize how much I was restricting and harming myself and the aftermath that creates in my life. And I live a lot of those aftermaths in the before because I'm still working on changing them. You know, when we have this whole 5x9 box understanding, you know, to approach anything, we need to relearn. And as I said in previous videos, we relearn how an infant or a young child relearns. We relearn by exploring. So be creative in ways, you know, and it feeds into our natural ways of doing things as well. Like, I remember, I only got reminded of this. You know, every night I have these stones that I place around my bed in prayers to help me try to get into a positive state, because I have a lot of difficulty sleeping, and to try to create this routine to help me sleep. And I remember that when I was very young, like 2, 3, 4, 5 years of age, I would find all these little things that I laid out on the pillow next to me. And there was a mom, there was a dad, there was a brother, a sister, a grandma, and grandpa. They were all family and friends. They literally were my family. And that framework was contained within my 5x9 box, because they were just words that had a lot of emotion attached to them. But I had no idea what a mom actually was, or what a father actually was, or what a brother actually was. And that's one of the neurologically limiting aspects of trauma, especially when you're looking at pre-verbal and early childhood, is you have this massive amount of complex emotion attached to a word. And there's no titrate, there's no interaction with that word. And that creates very powerful physical barriers when we actually try to engage in a physical construct or a physical way in the world. But our nervous system gets overloaded because it's dealt with all those times of all this emotion to just a word. There is no interaction with a word. So understand that when you look at yourself, at ways that you've instinctively explored expanding your 5x9 box, and how those decisions that were made created the reinforcement of that 5x9 box. Because there's the points that you can start to work with. So, when I place these things down now, I have one that represents masculine and feminine, one that represents light and dark. I create consciously areas of order and chaos, of change, of emotional interactions, conversations with that I would have loved to have had with my mother, including the anger at her not keeping me and not being able to, even though she really had no choice. My conscious mind knows that. My heart, as a child, doesn't understand it. It's understanding all these nuances within your 5x9 box so that you can find ways to explore. And as I said, the way we work with this and expanding it is we need to teach our neurophysiological self. We need to teach our nervous system to be able to cope with more inputs, with more interactions. And we need to do that slowly and in stages. And we need to do that as comfortable as you possibly can. We don't want to feed all those decisions that want us to draw and reinforce that 5x9 box. Keep all this in mind. This one is a hard one, and I'll definitely do more videos on it before I finish this playlist, because we're now starting to get into areas that, you touch one spot, it's going to ripple into others. So be kind and gentle. Take your time with this. Be patient. Awareness and patience are the two most powerful tools you have. Learn this stuff and be patient with yourself. You're going to have good days, you're going to have not so good days, and you're going to have really bad days. That's part of healing. But it's working within those days to expand your 5x9 box. So as always, be kind and gentle. I love your questions and your feedback. Please be patient with yourself. Take time with this stuff, and I will see you next time. Hope.